Welcome to the One Player Podcast, the show on solitaire games. I'm your host Albert, and this is episode 376, Puzzling About Games. Hi, welcome everybody. Today we have a special episode. We have two guests, Mike and Olga Reimer from Caravel Games. We're gonna talk a little bit about some of the games they've made and a Kickstarter they've got coming out, and maybe also gonna talk about Tariffs. We'll see how that goes because I know that's changing so much. Anyway, hi Olga, hi Mike. How are you guys doing?
Hi, we're doing good. How are you?
Yeah, hi, Albert. I'm glad to be on the show.
I'll be honest, it's been a while since I've done an interview. Uh, and I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I'm rusty with it. Fortunately, people are not here to hear me. They're here to hear about the games. So the games kind of sell themselves or present themselves. But anyway, and this is what I'm talking about. I'm just gonna ramble. I don't know what to say. So you are the owners of Caravel Games,
Yeah, that's right.
and you've been making games forever, basically. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Caravel Games?
Yeah, we run Caravel Games, and we are an independent game development studio and publisher. So, yeah, you mentioned we've been around for forever. Yeah, we've been making computer games and releasing them since 2002. That's primarily
Wow.
on Windows and also Linux and Mac. Our games are on Steam and other gaming portals like Good Old Games.
Mm-mm.
We're primarily known for a puzzle adventure game franchise called Deadly Rooms of Death, or D.R.O.D, D.R.O.D for short. Since just before COVID, we've also been getting more actively into tabletop gaming development.
Okay, and yeah, so D.R.O.D is a whole series of games, right? There's like 5 or 6 of them at least, I guess, and they're expansions on the first game and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yes, that's right. It's a franchise of.
Okay, so so what got you guys into game development? Are you gamers? Are you video gamers, board gamers? Neither, both.
For me, yeah, I've always been a gamer and have liked all kinds of games since I was a kid. I'm especially interested in unique experiences and themes, that games can provide, enjoying these experiences with my wife and kids. I've been
Gotcha.
drawing tile-based games on graph paper since I was little, and I learned how to program by making my own games growing up. So
Mhm.
I like
Cool.
using
Okay.
level editors and making my own levels and campaigns, and it's like a way to make your own game without having to design and implement the whole thing.
What kind of games would you make levels for?
Yeah, one is well, I loved the game Gauntlet, and there are clones of that I played on the Commodore 64, and it had a level editor, and I made a game called Demon Stalkers and made levels for it. So yeah, way back. And also another one was a Jumpman clone called Wizard, Ultimate Wizard on the Commodore 64. Made like 100 levels for that thing. And also
Wow. Okay.
more recently, and not that recently, but have also made levels for FPSs, like Doom
Hmm.
and so forth.
Right. Okay. And for us board gamers, FPS is first person shooters,
Hmm.
right? Which is
Yes.
the which so I'm an old school gamer too, right? So for me, those are the newfangled 3D games.
Yes, exactly.
Right? I grew up playing on the Atari, and then I had an Atari computer. So yeah, so that's hyper modern as far as I know. I personally don't play video games as much as I used to. More board games.
Yeah, so yeah, I played a bunch of classic board games and some designer games growing up. Fun ones like Dark Tower or Cosmic Encounter. Which has been around for a long time. But my wife and I were swept up in the board gaming renaissance of recent decades, and so in addition to developing cute
Mm-hmm.
computer games, we love trying out our own new tabletop games together.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, we loved it so much. So we wanted to create something unique and something what we like and share the experience with others. So that's just kind of, I guess, our experience.
And that's what led you guys to making Twisty Little Passages, I guess, is the first. Have you made other games besides the ones you've published?
So yeah, we have a bunch of prototypes that are always like on the back burner and we're playing around with. Yes.
Okay. So let me see. And here I am jumping around. Let me ask you about D.R.O.D. the video game, the Deadly, what is it? Deadly.
Deadly Rooms of Death.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Um, I downloaded one and I played it a little bit. I didn't get very far. I think it's the first one. I really had fun with it. I like the music. It's catchy. I like the. It looks like an old school game, which I guess it is. I don't know when it came out. You said 2002 or so, probably.
Yeah, that's when we started.
It's a lot of fun. I didn't get very far. I think I'm maybe on level 2 or 3 at this point. I just haven't had much time to play. It reminds me a lot like of a, just for people to get a sense what it is, a lot of a roguelike in that you move. It isn't a roguelike at all. It's not procedurally generated. It's not a, you play until you die and then you have to start over. But the way you move is rather roguelike. I think that each time you move and then the enemy moves, and then you move and then the enemy moves. And you're exploring a dungeon, so it kind of feels like a roguelike. For the uninitiated, it may as well be, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd say the D.R.O.D franchise are what we call stepping games. You have a character
Okay.
on a 2D grid. There's a top-down view, and yeah, it's like turn-based play like that. So yeah, it's all deterministic. There's handcrafted puzzle rooms, and there are a bunch of game elements with well-defined rules. So that interact with you in various ways, and you can bring out a lot of emergent gameplay by combining them.
Yeah.
So it's like a board game, except the computer manages all the bits and rules for you. So at times it'll feel more like playing something like Gauntlet instead of say chess.
Yeah, it's. I find it funny you mention that because I really struggle playing board games on a computer. I could play a video game just fine, and like Draw It, I played and I got into that, and I'm having fun with it. But if you put a board game in it that tends to have more complex rules into the computer, and the computer's managing those rules for me, I just get bored. I don't bother trying to learn the rules, and just clicking and stumbling along. And I don't know why. It just, for me, it just doesn't work. Which is the strangest thing. It should be the same exactly, but I find those hard.
Yeah. That's it. That is interesting. Yeah, that's a good point there. Yeah, I've experienced that as well.
And it's specifically board game implementation or video game implementation of board games specifically. Unless it's a game I guess I know really, really, really well, and I don't have to try and learn the rules. But I don't know. Oh, there goes my dog barking. I may have to bring her in here. Um. So so D.R.O.D is it's a game that's been out for a while. It seems to have a fan base. I guess there's lots of levels. People make levels for them. Is it still really active?
Yeah, yeah, like you said, yeah, it Caravel and the D.R.O.D series originally started as a series of hobby projects. We had a group of folks collaborating
Hmm.
virtually online, and some people were from all around the world too. And we were producing an open source version of the original D.R.O.D game. And there's still, yeah, we have a forum, and there's a solid community of players that congregate on the Caravel forum, and many have been actively participating in events and contributing content for years. And in internet
Wow.
time,
Okay.
that's like a lifetime for people to stick around.
Yeah.
And so we provide a service that players can subscribe to, unlock online features. There's a good number of community building features like level editor, mods, leaderboards, and we've stuck to our open source roots. So players, project code is available online, and interested community members can contribute directly to project development and add new features and so on.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, several individuals have worked on improvements and new major game versions simply as a labor of love over the years.
Well, for me personally, I saw the D.R.O.D community growing together with our kids because we just kind of were like young family when my husband was working and developing with other friends. Yeah, and there was a lot of teenagers in the community, and just 20 years later, they're like all growing and having their own kids, and like our kids are going to college, and so it's kind of like a special experience, and it's really family friendly and really fun, very healthy too. So
Ah, okay. That's neat. That sounds really neat. Hmm.
You asked about some ways that, yeah, like what the community's doing, or user made stuff, and in some ways, D.R.O.D has taken on a life of its own. Players have, they can publish their own levels, and I think there's been like tens of thousands of puzzle rooms, published at
Oh
this
wow.
point
Okay.
that like anybody can download and play for free, and so you could play those forever. And a couple months back, I saw there was this event where there's this massive single campaign of, I think it was thousands of puzzle rooms that was released all, as one campaign. And it had been jointly developed by like dozens of puzzle architects in the community over a span of like 10 years. And now it's finished and available, free to play.
Oh wow, that's so cool. So all you gotta do is just basically buy the one game, and you've got countless hours of video game fun there. And yeah, it's a neat game. I that must be so satisfying to see that, to see the stuff coming on, just going, wow, yeah, yeah. You must be really proud of it. The like I said, I've only gotten to the first game. I've only encountered one enemy so far, which is those little roaches, and I guess the queen roach also. They're so creepy. The way they just keep coming and coming. I like it. I really like it. Am I going to encounter a lot of different enemies or over?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot more. So it ramps up. And yeah, like each level or so, there's like a new element or mechanic introduced.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, it builds up to a whole collection of stuff by the end.
And it's kind of unique too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. As I'm playing each game, each level, like I walk into a room and it's a puzzle figuring out how do I need to like approach is which, where do I need to start attacking from, and how do I kill the roaches without them getting to me, because if there's so many I'll get overwhelmed. I need to figure out the right way to funnel them towards me, sort of thing. It's probably hard to understand what
Mhm.
we're talking about without seeing it, but yeah, it's really neat. Man, I really like that game. Um, okay, so let's talk about board games. So board games. So in 2019, you did a Kickstarter for the Twisty Little Passages, which is,
Yes.
it's not D.R.O.D, but it seems sort of like inspired by D.R.O.D, maybe, kind of. Can you tell us a little bit about that game?
Yeah, Twisty Little Passages is like, yeah, it's like D.R.O.D. It's like dungeon crawling on pages in a book. That's how I describe it. And so in the
Mm.
Twisty Little Passages book, the pages are all laminated, and the point of how you play it, there's a map on the page, and you can mark off actions you perform in the maze like map areas with a dry erase pen, and then you can wipe the page and play it again. So where that came from, the idea of Twisty Little Passages came from an unusual source. Our son said he had a dream of a game like of
Mm.
Minesweeper or something being played on graph paper in a book. And that's
Oh.
kind of a dreamlike mashup there, right? And there are also some
Mm-hmm.
enemies and stats, and I thought, that's how would it be possible to play a puzzle game like that in a book where everything's laid out on the page and you can see everything. So how can you make a puzzle like that fun and engaging? And so I had a flash of inspiration. We have a game called also along like a spin-off of the D.R.O.D series called D.R.O.D RPG. It
Oh, okay.
has some like RPG light stats, and it still has and it has deterministic combat. No randomness, and it has a bunch of puzzle rooms put together. And the point is that you try to go through the area, um, you know, that as kind of a puzzle box that you're trying to solve. You're looking at all the different areas, figuring out how all the different pieces fit together, and how to go through the challenges and get through it to the end. And so um, I thought about taking that idea of D.R.O.D RPG, where you can essentially see everything that's in an area. You can look through all the rooms and think about, it's a fun adventure puzzle, but maybe I could design we could design more bite-sized puzzles, that fit on a single page or two, so you can open the book and lay it out on the table, and you can see the whole thing at once, and you can see kind of what the puzzles in that space are like, and a lot of the principles of like you come up with a strategy, you see where those kind of linchpins in the puzzle are, and figure out like how are you going to optimize your moves. So and I think that translated well from D.R.O.D RPG to Twisty Little Passages, to be able to play that, and solve those puzzles on a book page. And my wife and I developed the main character
Mm-hmm.
and the story experience together. So there's like a story you go through as you play through those puzzles.
Yeah, there is like so the story and the character, the main character was just kind of like my personal. I had fun just thinking and creating and kind of like having experience that I cannot do in real life. So it was just really fun to kind of make it personal and just share it with the world. It was just an unique experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was fun.
Okay. Okay, so this game you mentioned there's a story in there that you wrote. That's really neat. Is it when I was looking at the Kickstarter and it said it mentioned the word game book, but I assume you don't mean a game book like a choose your own adventure where you're making choices of how to follow the story. It's a linear story told through the puzzles. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Or is okay?
Yeah, it harkens back to like old school experiences, and that's why we call it Twisty Little Passages, which is like a reference to games like Zork and Colossal Cave. These text adventures where you have a
Mm-hmm.
bit of story, and then we give some story, and then we say here's some elements in the area, or the room. Here's some enemies, and you have to, and then here's a map, and you figure out how to navigate it and solve the puzzle. And so yeah, it's not like a computer program, but in some ways it works better as a play experience because you can draw the areas organically. Anything you can draw on a page, we make that look really cool. And as a player, when you're playing that, you can just make those moves intuitively by hand. You're not having to type in commands on a keyboard or use a mouse, and you just kind of mark things off on the page and explore the whole puzzle, at the speed of thought. And you can carry around the book and pull it out to play anywhere. And so, in some ways, the form factor is better that way.
Yeah, yeah, it seems really nice. And you mentioned it. You write on it using a dry erase marker, so when you're done, you could just wipe it off. Or if you mess up and you realize, oh, that didn't work out, I can't finish this puzzle, wipe it out and start over.
Yep, and something people you do is do different colors, and yeah. Oh, please.
My cat just came in. I don't think the cat. Somebody opened the door, not the cat in. Um, yeah. What's it say?
You're doing a puzzle on the Kickstarter. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was looking at the Kickstarter, and I did one puzzle. You sent me the links as an example. And it was pretty simple, but still took me a little while to figure out the right order. You're having to choose which room to go to and grab the keys from that room, and then go unlock doors. And there's one red herring that you don't even need to open a door, and I guess you could, but it doesn't lead anywhere because there's like a collapsed tunnel drawn in the in that puzzle. But so you have to be very careful how you spend your keys to get to there and do them in the right order so you can get everything done. In the end, that puzzle, it's an introductory one, it was relatively linear. There wasn't much to think about. It was just to get a sense of how to work. I guess the other puzzles later have more
hmm
complexity. I think you said there's different colors and stuff also.
Mhm.
Like, is it different color keys open different doors or something like
Like
that?
yeah, well, like typical areas, maybe take like 5 to 15 minutes to play through, but you probably need multiple tries on
Mm-hmm.
later areas as you work out the solution. Um, Yeah, yeah. So the puzzles, yeah, get quite involved, even though it's all on one page. The idea, yeah, the point of the puzzles is you see there's kind of some concept or principle. There's some kind of obstacle you need to resolve as you go through it. You need to understand like what's the catch, what's the linchpin to solving the puzzle, and then you figure out how am I going to execute this once you catch that. And it's really nice to let players figure out and see, okay, I've kind of solved the puzzle and unlocked those, what's the right way to go through it. But if people need some help, we provide a hints and solution section at the back of the book if you need a nudge in the right direction. And there's also like spoilers for like how we solve each puzzle. So we wanted to let
Okay.
people, have, address it at kind of different difficulty levels, for each puzzle. If they get hung up on something, we didn't want them to get stuck. And of course, you can just go on to a later puzzle if you want to move on. That's fine too.
Mm-hmm. Maybe the first one's too easy. You can say I can just jump 3 or 4 forward. It kind of reminds me. I want it for me to. I want this to be clear to people. These aren't games. These are puzzles. Um, Kind of like
hmm
say the games from Binary Arts, or they're not called Think Fun, and other companies that make these plastic puzzles. They're almost like toys, and you can move the pieces around and slide the cars. Like games like Rush Hour, for example. It's a really famous one. It's puzzles like that's a puzzle.
hmm
Mhm.
And I would say it's not dissimilar to that at all, actually. Other than it's in a book and you're writing versus playing with the little plastic cars and moving them. But yeah, that kind of puzzle, which I think are
Yes,
really fun. I
exactly.
love those kinds of puzzles. So the more I look into this, the more this game is up my alley. Definitely. This puzzle, I just
Oh,
called it a
cool.
game.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yay! Yay!
Okay, so and now we're sort of rushing through 20 something years of Caravel Games, but that now brings us to your latest game, which is a game and is a board game, not a video game, and it's going to be on Kickstarter.
Yes.
Yes.
Wait. Oh yeah, and this is Time Fenix,
Hmm.
which you guys have the most interesting names for games. This I'm sorry. I'll be honest. It doesn't quite roll off my
Yes.
tongue. I read it, and I could read it fine, but I have to think about it. What is that? Is that right? And but it is. It's exactly right because it's Phoenix is the character, and he's stuck in time or traveling through time somewhat, I guess. So I mean, it is a time Phoenix,
Yes.
and it's not Phoenix like the bird rising from the ashes, though it sounds like it's a different Phoenix. So yeah, I I enjoy the titles. Is what I'm saying. So tell us about Time Phoenix. It's on.
Thank
It's going to be on Kickstarter soon. Tell us about the game and I guess
you.
about the
Hmm.
Kickstarter details.
That's right. Yeah, it's Time Phoenix is our going to be our first full blown tabletop game, and yeah, there's a character called Phoenix, and he's a warrior sage, and he's in a time loop, and so the Phoenix concept is kind of there where if he's
Mm-hmm.
going through one of these game areas or puzzle areas and he can't solve it, you can rewind in time, and it's kind of like reincarnating, and you can try it again. And so that's kind of the conceit there. We'll be funding this game for a mass production run, and it's a solo only game. It's fully resettable. It has a puzzle adventure resource management campaign. It has nonlinear gameplay. There's some legacy elements, some flip and write mechanics and deck management elements. So a lot of things put together. And so Phoenix is in this vast Magitech kind of facility, and he's working to stop this ancient threat with the help of a sentient AI. And it's kind of in the same world setting as in the future for the Twisty Little Passages story.
Okay, but it's not. It's the same setting, but not exactly.
It's in the future. Hmm. Yes. I was helping also like with the main character again, and so Phoenix was this mysterious person that I was fascinated when I was growing up. So I got the privilege to meet some indigenous people in Russia, and their culture, they come from Yakutia. So I kind of want to dedicate it, the character to indigenous people of Russia. And they're kind of really interesting because they're really similar in their traditions, the way they look, the way they just, the cultural, the lifestyle with indigenous people of America. So I thought, wow, this is a really nice way to honor, and kind of was just something, personal and something beautiful. So I'm just kind of a big fan and of their culture, and so that's how Phoenix came to be. He's kind of descendant from the group of people, and it's also very personal to me because I wanted to kind of deal in my personal, like in my own way, with what's happening in the world, kind of like wanna bring a little bit more light, a little bit more joy, a little bit more happiness to them, people around. And I thought, well, board game just can do that. So the story is not super deep, but I think the meaning for me, and kind of like it's really mysterious, it does have a deep meaning, kind of behind the scene. So that's kind
Oh,
of,
okay,
yeah, that's how he came to be.
okay. And I you sent me the rules and the scenario guide, I guess, the story for it, not the physical game or anything, just the documents to read. And the story, is that the finished story or is that still being worked on?
Yeah. That's a draft of the finished story.
Okay, it's I like the characters; they're fun. I like the way
Any
they
thoughts
talk.
on that?
the the AI character, really annoying. very very fun to read. Fun thing to read. But it's yeah. All the characters seem to have a life and very good and very interesting. So it looks like it's fun to play through it. I like the way the game is introduced. From what I read, the it feels like a video game, right? The you introduce it and it's a simple scenario and you play through it, and then you get to the next scenario and now introduce a little bit more of the story and more of the rules. A lot like a video game. Especially the modern ones, they'll teach you as you go, right, as you play, and add a little bit
Hmm.
to the complexity of the game and the story. And I think that works really well. But does that make it hard to jump into the middle as a gamer? Like, if let's say I play through it and I come back a year later, can I just jump in the middle, or would I have to kind of start from the beginning to learn the rules, or is there a rules reference where everything is spelled out for me?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Great point. Um, yeah, like um, let's see. Yeah,
I
is
think you can. I mean,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you
yeah.
can just save the, everything on a paper, like it's just something, it's kind of like a journal, you
Hmm.
write in your journal and then you come back to it and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. So yeah, I would say yes, why not?
Yeah, like riding a bicycle in
Okay.
some ways, I
Yeah,
think.
I guess so.
We
Is
wanted
it?
the mechanics and the elements to be like very straightforward, like they have straightforward, simple rules. And the way they interact is not by adding on a lot more complicated rules. It's more
Mhm.
like there's a lot of emergent gameplay. How do these pieces, work together in combination? And so as long as okay, I'm interacting with this element on the page, drawing a card, those things are all pretty straightforward.
It's a game that I could. This is where I said I'm really rusty in doing these interview things, and I'm finding it hard to know what to ask. And I've got notes here, and I've kind of jumped around a little bit. And I mean, to begin with, my notes are not that great. Um, I
Oh,
asked you a
you're
question about the
perfect.
game. We've talked about the game. It's puzzle like. I don't know if we said it exactly, but it's puzzle like Twisty Little Passages, but now it's a game instead of just a puzzle. But similar styles of puzzles.
Hmm.
They're more intricate. There's more complexity, and because it's a game, they're more random. So it's not necessarily exactly the same solution every time.
Hmm.
And from what I
Hmm.
saw, the other thing that's more gamey is as you go from level to level. Maybe I misunderstood stuff. How my first scenario plays through may affect how I'm going to be able to do my second scenario. Is that right? So
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk
okay.
about that a little bit. Our backers love Twisty Little Passages, and they asked for a sequel. Um, but some mentioned that
Oh.
the puzzles got pretty tough in there, and after a while, and went over their heads. Um, and yeah, we don't disagree.
Hmm.
But when designing a puzzle, think like a Sudoku puzzle, for instance. One good
Hmm.
thing about if you have a single solution is that when you find it, you solve the puzzle, you did it the right way, and you're fairly certain you didn't make a mistake along the way, right? Like filling it out or
Hmm.
something. But a bad thing is that some players wish to have more flexibility in how to
Hmm.
solve the puzzles, right? Not just one way, and they're saying, I'm just trying to find the one way to solve it. So maybe, they said you could try to do better to, as a player to get a better rating. If you find a better way to solve the puzzle, it's more open-ended maybe, and you can get, say, a 1 to 3 stars, score or something like that, depending on how you manage to solve it.
Hmm.
And so after wrapping up that campaign, we took this challenge to heart, this feedback, and Olga and I spent a few years thinking and researching other games and gaining inspiration for how we might improve upon the formula. So we found some things that in the board game, the tabletop gaming space, that work really well. Um, we noticed strengths of solo games. We were looking to do a solo game, and so we found, with games like Hadrian's Wall and Twilight Imperium, it's essentially a puzzle, right, where you gain resources in a random
Hmm.
order, and you can make a lot of combos to push your progress further and try to get that as far as you can. And we took ideas from that and drew inspiration from some other places, some video game places, and took the Twisty Little Passages design and added some deck management and a card draw for resources. So Time Fenix is now non-deterministic. And instead of solving static puzzles, we designed the puzzles so there's some leeway and flexibility in how you can solve them, and you can adapt as your situation develops. So you can now solve the puzzles more efficiently. If you can do that, you can increase your score in each area. Um, and there's also an option to choose when you take some damage to draw more resource cards from the deck. And the more powered up you are when you do this, the less damage you'll take, things like that.
Hmm.
And you mentioned like the progressive gameplay. So there's this metagame element where you can tackle areas in a flexible order. It starts out very straightforward and becomes more and more open ended as you go, to let you try out different things. You get permanent power ups along the way, like stat boosts or additional inventory and abilities. And that lets you take on larger challenges when you feel ready, and you can revisit old areas to reach side objectives or secret objectives. So there's a lot of replayability in each area and over the course of the whole campaign, and how you want to go through it.
Yeah.
Uh, when you say you could go back to unlock areas you missed, so that means I'm looking to scenario book, and let's say I get to chapter 5 or scenario 5, and I play through it, and I'm able to solve the chapter and get to the go, but there's a couple sections I just could not get to, just much as I tried. They just don't work. But after I get up to 12, I now find some item that suddenly I could go back. If I do 5 with this item, now I could do it, or with this card that I unlocked or something. I guess I'm not sure exactly how it works, but that sort of thing, I guess, is what you were saying.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there are multiple objectives, like goal points, you can get to in most of the areas. So, like if there's, you might be able to get to one of them that's easier to reach, and you're going to need to get some additional items or stats, or maybe a special ability, so that you can clear out the other areas. And a big part of the game strategy, and the core part of the gameplay is understanding that meta element, and thinking through what you need to get to solve which to get to which objectives, when you're ready to go back and attempt those. And of course, as the Time Phoenix, you can, if you don't do it, you rewind time, and then you can try to start the area again, and try to solve it a different way.
Gotcha. Okay. And you've told me so much stuff. I may have missed it if you said this or not. I think you've mentioned it before, but it's basically a campaign game, is what you're talking about here. Then.
Hmm. There's a series of areas, and each one is a unique, handcrafted puzzle, essentially, where there's multiple objectives to try to get to. And we've structured it like a Metroidvania, if you're familiar with that term, in video
No.
gaming, where I'm using that term a bit loosely, but what it means, because there's no not like a platforming element, but the idea is that there's a set of areas to explore, and there's permanent power ups scattered through the areas and boss encounters along the way. And as a player, the core part of the strategy is to decide as you explore the areas what upgrades you want to go for next, understanding where you're blocked, and what the limitations are, and what will help unlock new areas. And you get further upgrades for your character until you're powerful enough to advance, and you finally are able to confront the final boss. And so once the final area in Time Phoenix is accessible, the player can decide whether they're powerful enough to take on the final boss, or do they first need to gather more power ups, and they have the flexibility to do that. You can go through and play more areas if you want to unlock additional goodies and power ups and so forth.
Mm. So I could play the game beginning and end and not see all the content.
Yeah, that's true. And so you can replay the campaign if you want to, or take additional paths, or try to solve it a different way. Maybe there's ways to go through it more efficiently. Maybe you can do what's called a sequence break, to skip a certain area if you want to jump ahead faster, like a warp. Or do you want to solve additional areas, and gather up more points that way? So yeah, there's lots of options in how you approach it.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, it sounds cool. How long does this game take to play? I don't know if we mentioned it, but Twisty Little Passages, I think the Kickstarter said it was like 15 to 30 hours, something like that.
Yeah, there's like 25, over 25 puzzle areas there, and we're, affording, the first one, like you said, is easy. The point is just to get familiar with the mechanics, and the format. You feel like you understand what's going on, you're doing things the right way, and then, we start, throwing, more, content and puzzles at you as a player. Um, so yeah, and here there's in Time Phoenix, there's about 50 different mission objectives across, um, 16 or more areas, and then you've got a campaign sheet that shows you can track your permanent objectives on that. It's got a map of this sprawling facility you're going through underground, and so you can mark your progress and your scores on there to keep track of what you've done. And so at any point in time, you can just go back, like you said, 6 months later, if you want to come back and say, okay, this is the next area I want to tackle, and this is where I am at this point, and you jump right into it.
That sounds neat. That sounds cool. Okay, so I'm a listener and I've heard this and say, hey, this sounds really good. I'm gonna go buy this game right now, but they can't. because it's a Kickstarter. So, but it's not a Kickstarter that's live yet. So when is it going live? What's the details behind the Kickstarter?
Yeah, the game is, Time Phoenix is complete, and the plan is to, we want to move quickly,
Mhm.
to production following the campaign. We are in the process of arranging early reviews now, and those should start showing up hopefully in May. And we'd like to
Mm-hmm.
hold the campaign in June.
Okay, so that's really soon, actually.
Right.
Yeah,
And so, yep.
that's cool. Okay, and when do you expect the game to be available?
And so, yeah, the point is to, if we move to production following the campaign, the goal would be to get the game in players' hands in time for the holidays.
Mhm.
So that's the schedule we're targeting there.
That's pretty quick. Okay, that's it. And how much is it gonna cost?
Yeah, we're targeting a pledge amount of $35 to $40 for Time Phoenix, and I think it's great for the amount of gameplay in it. We're trying to
Mm-hmm.
get that amount down a bit for backers.
We kind of talked, but it's got a fair bit of components. It sounds like also you mentioned there's cards and other stuff. So.
Yeah, there's the campaign sheets, of course, where you track that, and then we have a stack of laminated double sided area sheets. Each side has a unique map to play through. And we're including multiple dry erase pens and a cleaning cloth to play on those. And we're considering different color pens for marking points of interest or tracking your progress as you play through an area and so forth. And there's what's called a focus deck, from which you draw cards from a card supply during the campaign and grow that focus deck. And it provides a set of resource cards you can play strategically as you work through each area. To get additional key cards to unlock doors, for additional materials to purchase power ups, that kind of thing.
Yeah, lots of little cute things like
Okay.
keys, and it's so fun and colorful. Yeah, it's gonna look great. Yeah,
Yeah, it should be a nice set of
yeah.
translucent screen key cards of different
Mm-hmm.
colors used to unlock. There's lots of doors to unlock, and yeah, these are really fun
Yeah, it's
bits.
very entertaining. Mm-hmm.
And then there's you mentioned the storybook. We have the 64-page storybook to go through the campaign. And that's for immersion and world building, and it walks you through the new game elements and the mechanics as you advance through. But it's intended to help players orient themselves as you get to each new area, to kind of hear like what's going on here, what's the objective. And you can skip the story parts if you're not interested. And but the
Hmm.
ideally the rule book is, we want the rule book to be used primarily as a reference at points, of the game during the campaign, rather than something new players have to just, they're forced to absorb
Mm-hmm.
before they start jumping into
Right.
playing the first areas. And so, like, from our video gaming design roots, where a design goal we've kept in mind is how to optimize the amount of time players are spending on playing the
Yeah.
game. Meaning, enjoying the process of making those fun decisions, as opposed to dealing with the execution of a bunch of rules and fiddly bits.
Okay. Yeah. There's some war games I've played that are the exact opposite of that, where when I'm a complicated game, when I need to learn it, I will read the rule book the first time. Then the second time, I will set up the game, and this is the next day or something. The game away. Just set it up as all I did. Then I will kind of go back through the rules again, get familiar with it. Then I will set up the game again, like on the fourth night, and play through a couple turns, and and now finally by the fifth night, which I guess if I start on a Monday, it's now a Friday night. I guess I got a lot of free time now because the weekend's here. I can finally start playing the game for real and hopefully making meaningful choices. So yeah, some of those games are a bear to learn, and this one, like as I was reading the story, it's like right away it's telling me what to do, and I do like that. And I would say, yeah, the players should not skip the storybook.
Yeah, we have a big family, so my husband and I have a lot of kids. So it was like that
Oh, okay.
something was personal for me. I'm like, yeah, I want to make it simple, and something you have enough time to play, enjoy it, and then also have time for your family. So yeah, we kept that in our we kept in mind that. So hopefully it's all just make it as comfortable as possible. Yeah, as comfortable as comfort is a big priority.
Yeah, and that it's technically a solo game, right? You can play it as a team, right? As all together working to
Yeah.
solve a puzzle, and that's something that everybody can collaborate on. That's a lot of fun as a
Yeah,
group.
it's like especially for a couple, it's like really really fun. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
A lot of solo games, especially like the puzzlier ones, work well as group activities. Definitely. On BGG on the one player guild before, I've gone and what game is it? Ricochet Robot. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It's a bit of an older game
Mm-hmm.
now,
Mm-hmm.
where you're moving the robots around, everybody's trying to solve it at the same time, trying to figure out the most optimal move to get the robot to the right space. And that's a fun game to like post on BGG for everybody to play and see who's going to get the best score. And as a group activity. So yeah, solo games work really well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Funny enough, it doesn't always work the other way. Some multiplayer games just can never solo. No, I mean you could do anything, I guess, but yeah, they're trickier.
Yeah, and yeah, we're hoping that players as they play Time Phoenix will post their scores for
Mhm.
areas and the campaign online and on BGG and stuff and share strategies and try to do
Yes.
their best and optimize and see who does best in different areas and stuff like that. It should be a lot of
Hmm.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be neat. Okay, and that kind of reminds you of the D.R.O.D community you have, I guess. It'd be neat to see a community like that also.
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
it. Yeah.
So the other thing I want to talk about then was how you guys are dealing with tariffs. I thought it'd be interesting to talk about tariffs. I have no idea how this goes because this is not something I usually do in the show. Um,
Okay.
because it's a big issue right now, right? It's I don't want to get into the politics of it really. I don't like the
Hmm.
politics of it all right now, but suddenly
Yeah.
importing stuff from Asia, where most board games are made, the cost has gone up incredibly, right? Like 100% or more. Um, as a small publisher, how do you deal with that sort of situation? Be- and by the time this has gone live, that may have changed completely. I don't know that we know yet. Nothing but a stressful conversation, and then it's over. Maybe it's gonna go on. We don't know.
That sounds great. Yeah, but there's a lot of uncertainty right now about what the tariffs will ultimately mean for players, right, and publishers. Um, yeah, short answer is unfortunately that it's going to depend. Um, well, tariffs
It
will
always the answer,
predominantly
yeah.
impact customers in the U.S. There's that's not a hard and fast rule. Possibly due to supply chain issues and logistics, um, and so for publishers at large, the for inventory that's already in the U.S., it generally makes sense that it continues selling at prices we're used to. But for all new products that will be shipping in after April, is where we'll start seeing a huge change. And of course, like you said, this could change at any time. So this impacts us. This impacts our campaign that's going. We're wanting to launch soon, and and how do we navigate that? So the unfortunate reality, I think, is that for producers who work through distribution chains and game stores, will be hit the hardest. Um, a 100% tariff, just to throw out a number, it won't translate to a straight 100% increase in price per se, as it's tied to
Mhm.
the manufacturing cost of the product, and there's a lot of other factors. But you could expect to see, at least probably a 50% increase or more, and that could go up, further. But with these cost increases, our understanding is that no one's trying to be greedy here. It's just the nature of how the bean counting works to run a business and what people need to do to keep the lights on.
Right. So if you need to make just throwing numbers out, right? If you need to make $5 for each game you sell, and your cost to produce it doubles, you still need to make $5 per game, right? Because that's how much money you need to survive off. So that's why it doesn't double the price necessarily.
And yeah, and that's not exactly, yeah, and that unfortunately is, it's a bit more complicated because
Mhm.
distributors and stores work on margins. So rather than saying I want to make $5 on a game, they say I want to make 10% profit on a game.
Mhm.
Just to throw out a random number.
And that makes it easier.
And
Yeah.
so when the price doubles, they think, okay, in order to keep making 10% profit, I need to bump up, the markup on the game, of more than $5, in other words. So, there's this whole cascading effect.
Yep.
But the best option I'm aware of for, what it means for gamers is when game publishers are already producing their own product and getting it right into the hands of players. So this results in the smallest, realistic amount of markup that has to be done along the way. And so that's like what we're doing for our campaign. we're self-publishing as an indie game studio, and then manufacturing and sending it right to the backers. So in that case, U.S. buyers maybe could expect closer to roughly around maybe a 20% increase on the
Okay,
cost.
I see that does make sense because you're skipping all those middlemen that each inflate the same tariff amount or something. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
We're
yeah.
doing it because we love it. It's not our like primary source of income, so we're just doing it for fun and to share with the world and make the world a better like a better place.
Right. Yeah. That's it's like
Hmm.
for us, it's a passion project. We do the
Yeah.
things we like to do together. It's like we make the kind of games we love, to play, and
Hmm.
we don't see out there. So we're like, well, okay, we're going to design it ourselves. So and now it exists.
Yep. Labor of love.
Yep.
Does do the tariffs affect your timeline in any way? Like, do you, or is it so unclear that you just move forward without thinking about it? Like, are you saying, oh, I should go faster, or I should go slower, or I should wait before I start, or anything like that?
Yeah, right. That definitely factors into our decision making. In some ways, there's the temptation, and a lot of people have been talking about this. In the industry and community, the gaming community, like, um, and publishers, self publishers, like, should I just hold off on trying to publish my project right now or running a campaign because maybe, like you said, this might all be gone tomorrow, and we don't know, what's going to happen. So, um, as publisher, we've developed our own strategy. We think the most important thing for anybody to do is develop their own strategy. They need to have their own plan for how
Mm-hmm.
they're going to manage things. For us, we want to move forward. We think we have a good plan. We feel it's pretty solid. Happy to receive feedback and comments. Uh, we're as we're going to be producing our own product overseas, and then in part having it imported into the U.S. among other places. For the U.S. shipment, we'll have to pay for the tariffs out of pocket, right? So, what we're going to do for the Time Fenix campaign, we're going to be addressing tariffs in multiple ways. One way is to work directly with our manufacturer to and what we're doing there is splitting out the costs of manufacturing from their consultation and services and markup. This, talking about this hasn't mattered in the past because it's been kind of a non-issue, but now it's a factor that will directly impact costs all down the line. So being precise about manufacturing costs and what's being shipped in is a way of keeping out bloat, from in order to minimize the cost of tariffs. And I think that's the first thing that as a publisher we can and should be doing, to help out ourselves and players.
You're saying that if you make something with a manufacturer, and I haven't made games, but for example, I made a challenge going a few years ago for the One Player Guild, and I came up with a design
Mm-hmm.
with the guild, and then I went to the manufacturer, and they gave me feedback on what would work, what wouldn't work, and there's fees for that. There's fees for the layout, but that's not the same as the production stuff. So you're saying stuff like that, like I guess before they would just say, oh, it costs say $100 a game, so that's a flat number, that's fine. But now you're saying, well, it's $100 a game, but only 30 of that was for actually the production of the product, and that's the part that gets a tariff. The other fees, the layout or the graphic design, if they were doing the graphics for you or whatever, all that is not tariff because it's a service versus a product you're importing.
Right. In order to keep business going, yeah, that's something that publishers are going to need to start taking into account, and with their manufacturing partners, work through with them, because yeah, rather than putting a cost of, okay, the shipment just costs $100,000 coming into the U.S. because that's what we paid the manufacturer or whatever, what's the actual cost of goods, and yeah, that's a way to slim things down there.
And that's something that would not occur to me, right? So I could see where for a small publisher like you guys, like a Kickstarter, if you don't know to do stuff like that, it would just never happen, and you'd end up paying more tariffs. Or if the company you're working with doesn't share that information with you for whatever reason, maybe they don't know or whatever. That's a struggle. If you just not knowing, I guess that's an issue to
Right.
deal with.
Historically, it hasn't been, a big part of the equation. So,
Yeah,
you work with your manufacturer, and I'm, again, just making up a number. They say, okay, for your print run, you're paying $100,000 or something for your materials, and you just send them the check, and then they can put $100,000 on the cost of what they're shipping into port. But now, yeah, we need to be careful of the nuance there, and just be aware of that, and have those conversations.
Ah, okay. That is interesting. I had no idea. Um, there's something I've noticed that I mentioned to some other folks recently that I have been seeing news about all sorts of game publishers struggling, some closing. Right? It's been on MBGG mentioned. I've seen it on NPR and the national news and the New York Times that ran stories about board game publishers struggling. Is it just board game publishers? What I have not heard the same issue in other industries, and maybe it's because I follow board games way more closely than anything else. Have you guys heard anything different? I mean,
Yes, I have heard these stories, and it sounds like it's incredibly challenging
Hmm.
and heartbreaking in some instances,
Yeah.
that these challenges are
yeah,
a
It's a ripple
reality.
effect. Yeah.
Yeah, I have heard that's an issue in other industries, and that not to get too much into the news or politics. I've heard big box, CEOs of big box companies are
okay,
speaking out, saying, "Hey, if you don't want our supply channels to keep things to keep moving, we have to do something about this." So yeah, I think it's widespread.
okay, that which makes more sense. But I did think it was curious. I hadn't heard anything yet. To some extent, I'm sometimes trying to avoid
But yeah,
some
with
news. Just
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But also in the board game industry, I think a lot of people, companies historically are operating on kind of some thin margins, and so it's especially apparent here.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and when anything goes unexpected, then yeah, that's where the things fall apart. Like can fall apart, I guess. Okay, it's all really interesting. It is stressful, and it is hopefully we're just stressing ourselves over nothing, and things work out in the end.
Mhm.
But for
Yes.
now, it just seems to be turbulence and
Yeah. So I'd like to share some things that we thought of that we'd like to do
hmm,
for our campaign, and
okay,
just
okay,
maybe as we've developed as what we think is a set of best practices, and maybe other folks can
Hmm.
we can swap stories and hear about what other people are doing that works well. So I think one thing when you're running a campaign at this point, you need to have a formulate a clear plan and be transparent with your backers about how you're
hmm,
managing the situation. That's with respect to pledge amounts, shipping, tariffs, and from day one.
Hmm.
For instance, we'll be calling out that we're not raising pledge amounts to pay for tariffs. That the point is we're not going to be subsidizing costs in the pledges in ways
hmm,
that would make non-U.S. backers end up paying more. Um, we're isolating the impact as much as possible, just like has been done in other, geographically friendly campaigns typically, right?
hmm,
That's been something that people have managed, and this is just one more way we can manage it. And we'll be spelling out how much the tariffs are and handling this cost together with shipping. And we'll be collecting that campaign via Pledge Manager. So, and as we've been saying, due to the inherent nature of the situation in which tariffs could shift at any moment, and the amounts could go up or down. The point here is we want to adapt to the shifting situation to make our costs line up with the reality of the situation around the time we print, Time Fenix, and it arrives at the U.S. port. We don't want to ask any more from the U.S. backers than we have to in order to cover the cost of tariffs that we're
Hmm.
actually paying at the time, without any adding extra markup unnecessarily. And we also want to avoid a situation where, you know knock on wood, tariffs go up and we need to ask backers for more later, and people struggle with that kind of situation too. So as a publisher, we feel it's our job to make this process as transparent for backers as possible, so they don't have to do anything extra to manage their campaign pledge, from a process standpoint, any more than previously.
yep. Okay, I
So yeah, no, those are some of our thoughts on it, and we'll be spelling that out, in the campaign, how we're managing it. So there's, the point is to have a kind of a no surprises
Hmm.
policy, once the campaign starts, until people get the product in their hands.
Yes.
right. Yeah, I do appreciate that. I do prefer, and I tend to not follow Kickstarters anymore. Um, it's too easy to back a game and not worry about it because it's not taking space up in the on the shelf for a year or something, right? So, oh, back another game, and then some so you don't know where to keep them, which is the problem I'm having right now. I need to make more room here, but I do appreciate the information up front and all that, because I agree. I mean, the more you tell a person, the backer, the more of a choice, a better, more informed choice they can make. Because in the end, everybody's got to make a choice about how to deal with whether you want the game or not. That sort of stuff. Okay. Well, I appreciate you talking to me about the tariffs and telling us about your games and the history and of Caravel Games and all the stuff you've made. It all looks what I've played is fun, and the other games all look fun and interesting to me. So I definitely wish you guys the best of luck with the upcoming Kickstarter. And if any listeners want to
Thank you.
learn more, I will have links in the show notes to the new campaign and to your webpage and all that. Is there anything that I forgot that you want to mention or anything like that? Or
Thank you, Albert.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
I
much.
wanted to mention one other thing on just some suggestions, maybe or ideas, brainstorming around how to manage pricing and campaigns for crowdfunding campaigns or just new products coming out. It's kind of a way to to take off the sting a bit of the situation for players.
mm-hmm.
And so one thing we decided to do for our campaign for backers is to add more game content into Time Phoenix, in the form of a bonus expansion. And so we added this substantial amount of additional, unique play content. And the point is to give players more for their money.
Yep.
We found a way to do this without appreciably increasing the base price of the game. And, we've had to do additional development, but the point here is to give more game to players to offset the increase from tariffs. So it still feels like it can be a win-win.
Mm-hmm.
And so another way studios might consider doing this is by providing some digital content, or maybe focusing on digital releases, which wouldn't be impacted by the new tariffs, or components of their games that are digital. And this may,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand this isn't an option for everyone, but I think there's a lot of room for game developers and publishers to get creative and adapt to provide some additional values to players, to manage this new reality, so everybody can still win and keep playing.
I
Yeah,
see what you
I,
say.
I
Yeah.
personally, I'm observing something interesting when we were releasing Twisty Little Passages. COVID happened,
Ah,
Yeah.
and everything was just kind of in the air, like we don't know what's going on, and so and now we're and everything worked out. So that's kind of my experience. I'm like things happen and life goes on, and it's going to be okay. And
mm-hmm.
so the game was just perfect for during COVID time. It was a blessing to many. So I feel like if we just have like faith and good desires, they'll come through. And it's a good kind of like purpose, good hope. So yeah, that is just my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, hang in there, and a lot of times things work out. So just be patient and hang in there. And also, I like the idea of the digital content. You could, for example, and I don't know your thoughts exactly, but like for example, extra levels that you could download, maybe print out or play in an app or something like that, or see in an app.
Right. Print and play components, that kind of thing.
A different story with different scenarios on the same map or something. Yeah, that's interesting. So it's a lot of ways to get more gameplay out of your games. That's a good idea. All right. Well, again, thank you guys very much. I really enjoyed talking to you. Look forward to the Kickstarter.
Our pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for having us on the show, Albert.
Thank you. All right. Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy board gaming. Bye bye.
Thanks for listening. We love feedback, so we love hearing from you. You can reach me at julius@oneplayerpodcast.com or JLBird on BGG, and Albert can be reached at albert@oneplayerpodcast.com or Fractalute on BGG. Our website is oneplayerpodcast.com with the number 1, and we're also on Twitter at oneplayerpodcast. The intro music is copyright Angus, can be found at jamendo.com. The transition music is copyright by Dan Elduce Pancaldi, whose page is at donpancaldi.com. The One Player Podcast is protected under a Creative Commons share-alike license. Thanks for listening.